everyone. Glad to have you here with me today. Thanks so much for showing up. I'm super excited about today's guest. I have Jeffrey Bruner, who is the founder and curator of an organization called the Fussy Librarian, which is an amazing thing that all authors who know about it are super excited about. And I've been watching him grow in this organization for a number of years, and so today we're going to find out all about the Fussy Librarian and all about Jeffrey and his life as a recovering journalist, and we might talk about travel a bit because he and I both love travel. So I would like to introduce you to Jeffrey. There you are. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you today?
Hey, Pam. Thanks for having me today.
So excited to have you here. I love the Fussy Librarian, and I'm super excited to talk about it because I definitely have noticed the growth of it. But we're going to first start back in time because I want to find out about your past. I read that your foray into journalism began when you were in 8th grade, and you started writing stories for the local paper for $3 a story. And I'm so curious, like, how did that come about? How did you write a story and then try and sell it? Like, tell me about your 8th grade writing.
I think with a lot of local papers in the 1980s, and just kind of your local weekly paper was just run on freelancers, and some were like moms, and some were, kids in the 8th grade who wanted to write about the basketball team, and they were not anything. They were not anything to write home about, but they helped fill space, and they kind of helped me catch the bug and started doing more serious journalism in high school and working for my other local papers, and went into journalism after that and did that for about 25 years in total. And probably 7-8 years ago, it became pretty clear that journalists really started to need to have a plan B. A lot of layoffs, and which has only accelerated in the last couple of years. And so I kind of knew that sooner or later it was going to be me as I watched my friends get laid off. And so I needed to come up with something because I knew I was going to be able to be a journalist until retirement. And so I looked around and I saw something at the time, this new company called BookBub. And I thought, well, that's an interesting space, and they're doing some interesting things. And it's a highly scalable business in terms of it's a digital product, and you can grow by a factor of 10 or 100, but you don't need to have 100 times more people working for you because it's so scalable. And so as I set out, like, well, let me see if I can do that, and started up in, I think, 2013. And I did that for about a year while working my day job in journalism. And after about a year, I felt comfortable where it was like, okay, I can take the leap and do this as my full-time job. And it's kind of, hits and misses from there. You learn, you make mistakes. But I think we're on a good roll right now. And there's currently 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees.
Oh, wow.
And I think we're just going to keep growing in the next year or 2.
So for those people who aren't familiar with BookBub and therefore don't know what that model is, you said it's like BookBub. Tell us what it is. You tell.
What BookBub is a email newsletter. And some of these services some of the services are daily. Some of them you can pick how many times a week you get it, but you tell what types of ebooks you like to read, and then a list of suggestions is mailed to you each day. And so, for example, our free ebook newsletter, I think, has 19 genres. Our bargain newsletter has 40 different genres. And so you'll get books that just are the kind that you like to read. And you'll click on the links in there. You'll go to Amazon or Nook or Apple or whatever the retailer is, and you'll buy the ebook from them, and the ebook will be delivered to your e-reader or the app that you read. I think there's virtually all the e-readers now have their own apps that work on tablets and smartphones. So the business model is that authors pay money to have their book included in the newsletter, and that's how we keep everything free on the reader end.
Service for both readers and authors, just a different side of the same coin there. And you also do newsletters for readers and authors, different ones, and you always have so much good information. But this will take us back a little bit to your journalism. You were a wire person, and I was thinking, that's a phrase that you hear, and then I was like, I don't know exactly what that means. So tell me what wire means, and then how that applies to what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's kind of dying art now, but the wire services are things like the Associated Press is probably the one that everyone's most familiar with, which is, but a wire editor will basically collate news from a bunch of different sources and make decisions about what's going to go in the newspaper or website or whatever avenue you're using to deliver information to people. And so the last thing I did in journalism was I was the wire editor for the Gannett National Newspaper Company, and they had probably 70, 80 different daily newspapers. And they would have nation and world news pages, and myself and 5 or 6 copy editors would select national and international news stories, and we would keep them updated throughout the day, and they would be able to go and grab that story and put it into their own newspapers or on their own websites. And so it's a similar skill set, but let's say the author newsletter, we're just looking for things that we think of might be helpful to authors, either news from the industry to help them keep up to date what's going on, or some tips about career development or those sorts of things. So,
which is great. It's very much appreciated. I was reading some of your articles, and there's just so much going on in publishing these days, and maybe we'll get into some of that in a bit. But so to go back to the start of the Fussy Librarian, you were 2013, I understand, I think it was, that you started while doing your day job. So you started with zero. Obviously you started with 0 people on your email list. How many do you have now, and how do you start getting from 0 to 1? I suppose that's your mom and dad. But how do you get from 10 to 100, and how do you get from 100 to 10,000? How have you grown?
You grow by spending a lot of money, and we can get into that more later. But it's really expensive. There's a reason. For people who don't know, BookBub is by far the largest segment in our industry, and they have 8, 9, 10 million subscribers. But it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, they got, I think it was a $7 million investment from investors. And so when you've got millions and millions of dollars, that's how you can go out and you can build up your mailing list. But okay, back to Fussy Librarian. Our free ebook newsletter now has 440,000 readers, and our bargain newsletter has about 120,000 readers. And in the early days, I think we mainly just worked off of word of mouth and did some stuff on social media, did some contests to try to convince people who were early adopters to let their friends know about us. But then in more recent years, we've done a lot of digital marketing, and it's become easier to get yourself in front of people that you think will be most likely to be interested in the service that you're offering. And that's become more true of authors as well. More and more authors are trying their own hand at direct-to-consumer marketing. And it's not easy, and it's a lot of trial and error. But once you figure it out, you can get some good things going for yourself.
Do you have it figured out? Because if you do, we need to talk more.
Like I said, there's a lot of error in the trial and error.
But it's interesting when because you bring up BookBub, and I have to tell you, I don't think it's what it used to be. I think that BookBub has lost its. I mean, they're certainly the most expensive to use as an author, but I think they've lost a lot of their oomph that they used to have. You know, I've done a couple, and I think that you're doing better. You know, I get better results, I will tell you, from Fussy Librarian right now than I have had in the past from BookBub. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I think the flip side of that multi-million-dollar investment is that you now have people expecting a return on that investment. And that really affects the decisions that you make in terms of, like, we spend a lot of money keeping our free newsletter fresh, finding new people to replace the turnover. And when you have investors like BookBub does, there's demands on that, and so that maybe that affects your marketing budget because you need to send money back to those investors who have who invested it in you. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a never-ending, like you said. It's not only trial and error, but also it's always changing. And so it's not like once you figure it out, then you're like, now I know. It's it's always changing, and I'm sure it will continue to change. And I think
there's so many moving parts too, with like email and internet providers and email software, and what might work one day might cause a trigger something on an email software the next day, and so you're always trying to figure out what was the last thing that went wrong and how to fix it.
So what are some of the things you've learned about promoting books over the last 8 years?
I've become a big proponent of free book promotions as a way to get authors in front of the largest possible audience, and in that they're sort of a necessary loss leader, if you will, for an author, in that you need to get that exposure. Those are my dogs, and the mailman has come, which is their favorite part of the book.
It's exciting.
But I know some authors really don't like the idea of free, but I've just found it's in a lot of cases it might be the most cost-effective way, and over the long run may offer the best return on investment as far as marketing dollars. Is that you need to get people to sample, and doing free giveaways is the easiest way to do that in large numbers, to find people who are going to become your fans, who are going to buy the rest of your back catalog, and hopefully be spending $2.99, $3.99, $4.99 for those other books, and that you're going to be making most of your money back through that chain as you find people who come to discover you and support the rest of your works. I'd be curious what I know you do some free promos, so I'd like to hear what you've found in the last couple of years on that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, I definitely agree with that, because I thought the whole free thing for a long time, because my work has value, and all that, and it does, and it's true. But selling 0 books doesn't make as much money as giving away 100 books and selling 3 books. So, and it's it's better than that. But I came late to the marketing game, and I kind of got to the point before I started marketing. I kind of got to the point where I was like, did I just give up completely? And then I started trying marketing, because back then I was like, well, I don't want to pay for people should find it organically and so on. But then I started marketing, and I started paying for advertising. And I was like, holy cow, there's tons of people out there who want to buy your books, but they don't know where to find it. They don't know it exists. And so, and I think, I'm curious what you think about have you done any studies or data collection on if a person has one book for sale as opposed to, or one book for a free ebook sale, as opposed to if you have a series and you can start with the first book for free, and then that does lead to the rest of the catalog. Do you know what I'm saying? Let me clarify for people who don't know what I'm saying, since I haven't said it well. I know you know what I'm saying, but like I have a number of series, and I market the first one usually because then
Right.
that then leads into the other ones. But if a person has one book, is there any? What do you think about? Is there any value in promoting one book for free?
The only circumstance that I think that makes a lot of sense is if you're going to be building your own mailing list and you're going to use driving people to something like Book Funnel, where they're going to sign up to your newsletter in exchange for the book, and therefore you can let them know about your second book and your third book. I'm not a big proponent of doing that if you're just going to send them to Amazon and ask them to buy book one, because you're not going to be able to get back to them when you've got your later books. And I know that's not what a beginning author wants to hear. They got one book and they want to get out and they want to tell the world. But the strategy is to be patient, get the second book going. For one thing, get book number one to a really great editor, get it in that kind of post-production pipeline, get your people working on your covers and all that stuff. But in the meantime, you should be working on the second book and the third book. So at least you can get, especially if it's a series, you can then get that second book up. You can establish that, hey, this is a series. And you can have the pre-order page up, at least up for the second book. My brother is doing this exact same thing right now. He's trying urban fantasy. And I think he's on book 3 or 4 right now. And his challenge is basically being able to afford the editing for for the first book.
Yeah.
And I give him credit because he's been patient, because I'm like, your first book has to be solid, or else no one's going to want to read the second or third book. You've got one chapter, maybe 2 chapters to prove to them that you can write
Right.
and that's a story worth telling, or else they'll just go away and they'll go on to the next thing. So, but he has not put that first book online yet. He's going through the editing. He's working on the second book, and he's going to get that series page up so that at least people can hit the pre-order button when they're done with book 1.
How fast is he writing? Because, I'm in these groups where people write a book a month, and I'm like, oh, how do you write a book a month? That's just impossible.
It is. I think he's maybe doing every 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
He works a full-time job, so it's a hobby thing for him.
That's wow.
And he works in a production plant, so there's a lot of physical labor. So he's pretty tired most of the time when he comes home from work.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
you've been full-time for a few years, is that right?
2009 is the last time I had a full-time job. I've had non-full-time jobs since then, but my 10-year anniversary of publishing my first book is next year, so that's exciting. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's pretty early for 2009 is pretty early for going solo in the indie book scene.
Well, and that's why it didn't get published in 2000 until 2011. It's because, I was still looking for an agent for a long time.
Right.
And then 2011 is like, well, I don't want to just, leave it on the shelf, but I literally do want it on the shelf. I didn't want to just give up on that book. So then I self-published it. And, the number of mistakes I've made, I hope you haven't made as many mistakes as I've made, because I think that when you're talking about first-time authors, they want that book out there. And boy, do I know how that feels. But, and you can only learn it by going through it, I think, because people can tell you, but then you just are like, but I'm different. I'm like, no. So, which I was going to ask, does your brother have a really good cover artist? Because that is something I did not. It took me a while to learn on that one.
He's somewhat okay. He could do better, but he's got a budget that he's got to work with.
I know.
And the nice thing about covers is you can always go back and revisit them later, and the market almost kind of expects you to do that after a certain number of years if you want to try to make people feel that the product is still fresh.
Yeah, no, and I have done that a number of times. I have a new series coming out in early 2021, and it's my best cover yet. I'm so excited. It's going to be gorgeous. I mean, it is gorgeous.
How many designers would you say you've worked with over the years? Because you've got a really good one right now.
Well, I have a couple that I'm working with right now because my young adult middle grade sci-fi adventure series has one cover designer, Jim Tierney, who he worked with all the big publishing houses, and I found him by excuse me, I looked online and found a cover that I really liked, and I just emailed him, and he's like, well, I don't normally work with independent authors, but you seem okay. And so he's worked with me, and I'll jump through any hoop he wants just to keep him, because he's giving me such beautiful books. Like when I first had his book, and with all my other books, I didn't have any of the other really good covers yet. And people would come by my table, and then they'd be like, la, 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 la. Ooh. And they see that's the universes inside the lighthouse. And then for my Megan Montaigne mystery series, I have a cover. I have an illustrator who does actual art. She draws, and then I do the rest of the cover, which technically I think I would be better off having someone else do the rest of the cover, but it's a budget thing. But she's drawn, like, she drew me a crow. I mean, how hard is it to draw? And it's gorgeous, and she can do anything. So that's fun. And then this new series, I have a third group, because I want them all to look different. You don't want all your books, your series, to look the same. The series books should be the same, but this series should be different from that series. So
right.
So I have different artists for that. Tell me, so you said you have 19 genres for the free books and 40 for the bargain books. And I was looking on your site, and I just did a promo with you for Universes Inside the Lighthouse, which is it's children, young adults, so I put it in children. And I was looking, and it says that the cost per click for children's is the highest of all the genres. So is that because it's hard to sell children's books, I would say?
I agree. It is. It's that in young adult is probably the two.
That was the second highest.
Most challenging genres, and I would say both of those are 2.5 to 3 cents a click, whereas romance might be 2 to 2.5, and mystery might be 1.5 to 2. So there's not a huge spread. The nice thing with the free newsletter is we do go and look at the click numbers, and we're able to, when we do decide to make a price increase, we try to do it in a way that is going to keep that cost per click in the same sort of range, because we don't want the children's author to be paying 5 times more than the mystery author. That just doesn't seem right.
Now, explain to people what cost per click means.
Cost is going to be the author pays a set fee, and so for the children's free ebook promotion, it's going to be $23 right now. And cost per click would be the number of clicks that a book gets divided by the fee, $23. Okay. And so it's going to be 2 or 3 cents, and then sort of how good your landing pages at Amazon or Nook, or how good your cover is, those are going to be the factors that determine what percentage of those clicks you then convert into downloads or sales if you're doing a bargain promotion.
Do you have on your site, I didn't see this, but maybe it's there, and I'm trying to figure out what it is I want to ask. Let's say that your cozy mystery group has 100,000 people in it, email, and I don't remember. But do you have a list of what percentage of people click through? Like, so 12%, so 12,000 people or anything?
I'm sorry, you broke up. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. Do you have a list on your site, or or in your head, of what percentage of people within each group clicks through? Because I'm wondering, is there a group where more people click through per person, per capita?
What the conversion rate is going to be at Amazon or Nook or I don't. I used to be able to. I could have given you that 5 years ago, back when Amazon would let us use affiliate links in our emails, and but they don't let you use them anymore, and that's how we would know how many of those clicks turn into sales or turn into downloads. Amazon only lets you use them right now on websites. They won't let you use them in newsletters. I don't think makes any sense, but when you're as big as Amazon, you can do whatever you want, and no one can tell you otherwise.
What have you noticed in the pandemic? Have you noticed any trends in either readers or authors?
It appears people are reading more. We've been growing. The free newsletter's been growing pretty quickly, so it's been hard to tell because we're growing. But open rates have been good, and click rates have been good. So I know a lot of people are binging Netflix, but people are definitely doing a lot of reading as well.
So you have on your site an article that I appreciated seeing. It's why people should pay for books. So let's talk about that, because we started off talking about the free book as a loss leader and so on, but I mean, clearly, maybe it's not clear. I'm not doing this just for fun. I am doing it for fun, but I would like to be able to, afford to pay, for a few things with the money. And one thing I noticed, and I don't know if you've seen this or heard this, but when I do a free promotion, it's for however many days. And then the day after that, one time I had, it was with a different group. I had like hundreds of actual sales the next day of the same book. That's the goal, is to get, hundreds of sales of the same book that are sales. But what I have observed is that sales on the day after the promotion, so where people the day before didn't have to pay, but they did pay when they bought them, there's like a 10 to 30% return rate on those purchases the next day. And I don't know if people are like, well, I thought it was free. I mean, I know some people, they just get the date wrong. Or sometimes do they think, well, it was free yesterday, so she won't mind. And I'm like, no, actually, that was the point, is for you to buy it. Do you have any data on, is that average 10 to 30%?
I don't have any data on that specific. Because I don't get access to authors' return numbers. I would think a lot of that is people opening the newsletter the day after the free promotion has ended, or maybe they're going back through 3 or 4 days worth of newsletters and they're just blindly clicking and not looking at the price before they click. And then they'll get the confirmation email from the retailer and they'll like, oh, I just spent money on this. And some of them will be like, oh, it was just $1. Okay, that's fine. But some of them are like, no, I didn't want to. I only wanted it if it was free. And so they then go back and they return it.
I did have someone.
I think that's the bulk of it.
I wonder, because maybe I'm being too cynical, and maybe I'm just thinking that people are being too.
I'm sure there's a small percentage of like speed readers who will get something and blast through it and then return it in the 7-day window. I've been reading that's a growing problem in the audiobook field, and especially with Audible going out of their way to encourage people to return them, which is all kinds of wrong. But yeah, I think that's probably what's happening with most of those clicks, most of those returns that you don't.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell people, don't return your books. Just save the $2. Give the $2 to your artists.
But back to But yeah, back to talking about why authors need you to buy their books, and that um, yes, free ebooks are a big part of our business in marketing for authors, but we really do feel it's important to remind readers periodically that um, the people creating these wonderful stories for you are real human beings who need to buy groceries and buy the rent and make the car payment, and they need actual money to do all of those things. And if you don't support them by buying their books, sometimes they're not going to be able to afford to do that anymore. So um, I think it's important to keep reminding people that all artists and creative people have expenses just like the rest of us.
And with streaming services, because I have a friend who's a musician, and I keep track of how the music industry is similar to books, and like Spotify or whatever, it's just 0.000 whatever per stream, and it's crazy. And I don't know what to do about it because we've sort of created a society where people expect stuff for free, and then I think, well, I'm contributing to that by doing free promotions, but that's also how people find me, because otherwise they wouldn't find me. So um, yeah, it's an interesting double-edged sword. And then also right now we've got this whole dilemma with um, Amazon, just like that. People are sort of, Jeff Bezos has made however many $1 trillion in the pandemic, while all these other people are losing money and losing their houses and so on. And so people are like, well, don't shop at Amazon. I'm like, okay, but that's how I managed to have a career, so I get it. But I also I don't know how to fix that. Do you have you should start your own store for indie booksellers.
I have a similar love-hate relationship with Facebook,
Yeah.
in that Facebook is a pretty significant force for evil in the world, but at the same time, it's probably the best marketing platform in the history of mankind, and I couldn't have grown my business as fast as I have without it. So, what do you do? Yeah, I think the challenge for our industry is to figure out how to Amazon proof it and move, and so that there's a viable alternative. Um, Question is, that requires a lot of money. Um, so I haven't figured out the answer. I was thinking the other day about audiobooks and how there might be a model for that where maybe the audiobook is free, but you say you got to listen to an ad at the beginning of every chapter. That's how you monetize it. Yeah. And you still get people access to audiobooks, and the cost barrier will be low, and it'll be free to them, so they'll be more inclined maybe to give authors a try, but also figuring out a way how to get authors paid at the same time. So
yeah, because audio books, not just Audible, but audiobooks are not cheap to create. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars to create. And so, whereas I can put up an ebook for pretty much, depending on how bad my cover is, pretty low cost. An audiobook is, I'd say at least $1,000 just to get the narrator going, unless you have a friend who can do it for cheaper.
Yeah, no, I think the model needs to have some sort of, and ideally be some sort of system where it was the share of the royalty was front loaded to the author to help them recoup their production costs faster, and maybe you then flip the split after a certain dollar amount, so that helps the author recoup their production costs faster.
Yeah.
But also maybe as a lead magnet too for both authors and the company as well. So, but it's been a daydream, but and then it's like it's probably $100,000 or $200,000 proposition to get something like that off the ground at the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And I don't have that pocket change right now, so
It's so weird.
I know.
I mean, I have like almost 99 just spare change, but but the thing is, I listen to more and more audio things, and I'm thinking I really need to get my books into audio because when you're out on a walk or when you're cleaning the house or whatever, I mean, I listen to it, and I have friends who are like, I would totally listen to your books that I didn't have time to read. I'm like, well, all right. So yeah, I'm thinking, and you don't do audiobook promotion currently. You do just
Our bargain newsletter has a spot where you can list the audiobook link, but we don't do a lot of promotion with it. No.
And do you find, I mean, I'm assuming based on the numbers of subscribers, you said 400,000 for the free books and 100 for the bargain or so. So people are less interested in bargain books. Do you think it's sort of like I either want it free or full price? I don't really care if it's $2.99.
I don't know if they're less interested. It's just more that we've focused more of our marketing on the free newsletter in recent years. And the goal was to sort of grow that as quickly as possible and then use the revenue from that to then improve the bargain newsletter more.
I've also done another promotion site that has both bargain and free, and I can tell you the free is far more worth the money than the bargain is as an author. It just does not bring in as much.
No, it's a definite challenge. There's no getting around it. But and the easiest thing would be to just say, okay, we're only going to do free, because that's what more people want. But I refused. I won't surrender yet.
Not yet.
Because I do feel it's important to have that component there.
Before I forget, I want to tell you something I also noticed is your site. I think for whatever reason, and I don't know if it's correlation, causation, but I've gotten more ratings. Ratings seem to have replaced reviews, and you always, as an author, you hope for either sales and or ratings/reviews when you do a promotion, and I have gotten far more ratings from you than I had from other promotion sites, which is excellent because people, you see a site that doesn't have, or I see a book that doesn't have any reviews or ratings, and you're like, well, you want to spend that. So that's great. So thank you.
Right, because that's one of the other reasons we encourage people to give free promotions a try, is that can help with reviews and help generate what they call that social proof that other people will look for to sort of validate and give them that permission structured, like, okay, I want to give this a try because other people before me have vouched for it's a good thing and they enjoyed it.
Yeah. And Amazon seems to have gone to where you can just leave a rating without a review, which is annoying, especially on, I got a 1-star rating on my murder mystery Sent to Death, and I was like, but why did you hate it? Or, sometimes there's people who think a 1 star is the top. They it's not, and I'm like, did you hate it? Because it's not a crappy book. So why did you give it 1 star? Or did you just mean 5 stars? And, but you don't know if they don't leave a review.
Yeah, no, I've seen actual 1-star reviews that have made it very clear that they loved the book and they gave it 1 star and they had no idea what they were doing.
I know, right?
So no, I get it. Amazon wants to have more feedback, but is just the rating actual helpful feedback? I'm not sure it is. I think I'm not a big fan of that. I wish they would require people to leave some sort of review.
Yeah. Well, and it's
because then also the people to try to game the system too. They either for petty or political reasons sometimes. And it's just, I think it just kind of reduces the whole value of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if there's a review with it, you can tell that that's what they've done. Mm-hmm. But if it's just a rating, you can't tell that they hate your politics, and so they decided to leave you a 1 star.
Exactly.
You have written some books. And you want
I
to
have.
write more books, I read. And you've gotten awards in screenwriting. Tell me about your writing.
Um, I have not done much since I've started Fussy. I've got a couple obviously unproduced screenplays um, that I wrote in my 30s. Yeah, I wrote in my 30s. When I think everyone at that age is full of big ideas and they want to share them with the world and all that. And it turned out to be more of a writing exercise than anything else, but or cathartic in a way. I guess you can just say whatever you want to say, and um, that was fun. I'm not sure they were any good, but they were fun. But yeah, I written a couple plays for the stage that have been produced. Um, and that was a lot of fun too. There's absolutely no money whatsoever in writing for the stage, but it's fun. Um, the books, yeah, I've written two books under a pen name, and they're kind of, I guess I would call them religious fiction slash literary fiction. I wouldn't say they're really pure Christian fiction because they kind of raise some questions that challenge the mainstream church in a way. Um, that sounds more serious than it is, but anyways, it's a book about a young woman who was the daughter of a faith healer who starts to have some unusual things happen in her life and causes her to re-examine her faith and what it all means and things like that. And back to our earlier discussion about first books is um, in hindsight, I wish I wrote an okay first book and I wrote a better second book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that first book could have been better if I had worked at it longer, gone through more editing, things like that. But you're just so eager to get it out there and you want to share it with the world and you think it's going to change everything that it's really hard to be patient.
Well, and you can't get to the second book without going through the first book. You know, like you have to you have to write the first one first. My grandpa used to say that he always heard it was easier to make your second million, so he was just going to make the second million first. You know, you can't do so. You know, and the same thing with books. Like I look back at my first
Exactly.
books, and I'm like, you know, we're not perfect at they're not perfect now, but you know, but you have to go through that to get to the better books. I mean, that's just the way it is. So it's a
Yeah.
matter of patience, like you said, of like how willing am I to go through all these books and not publish them until I'm finally perfect or good enough.
Yeah. I would like to get back to it. It may be another, maybe a few more years, and it'll be interesting to see. I've turned 50, so it'll be interesting to see what writing looks like at that age versus 35 or 40. I think it all has to do with what you're going through at that point in your life. I think influences a lot of someone's writing. Um, but I'm glad I did it. I think it helps me get a little bit better understanding for what my customers and authors are doing. But I would love to get a little more time and get back more into it. Yeah, for sure.
Because you somewhere I read that you have dozens of ideas for books that you want to write.
I do. Yeah, doesn't every author? They always have more ideas than they possibly have time to write. So yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So if you were publishing a new book today, what would you do to market it? And this is just me like using you, just blatantly using you for my own purposes. What would you do to market your book?
I would. One thing, I would make it a series. I would. I would try to wait until I was on book 3 or book 4 before I even published book 1. But I would do free book promotions as much as I could afford, um, so that I got like a top 25 type launch to get it into as many hands as possible. Like, you know, 25, 50, 75,000 copies. And from there, I think you would build the, say, 5,000 true fans that would help you propel things forward and start providing that steady income, because then they'd go on to buy the second book, the third book. But I'd give away the first book. I would do the second book at probably $2.99 to take advantage of the higher royalty rates. Maybe the most recent book, $3.99, and see if you could sell that. All this assuming that the book's big enough, 250, 300 pages probably. But yeah, I'm a big believer in the 1,000 true fans theory, in that I forget who did this. This is probably 20 years old, at least at this point. But the idea is that you don't need to have the masses. You don't need to have 1 million supporters to be successful. You really only need about 1,000 people who really love your work and will follow you in whatever you do. And once you've established that core, you'll have a basis of support for the rest of your career, as long as you continue to keep those 1,000 fans happy. And if you're writing, when you think about it, you're writing 2 or 3 or 4 books a year, if that's, say, your full-time thing. They're buying all those books every year. And of course, they're telling their friends, and that 1,000 keeps growing. But I think what I read was like the 1,000 was sort of the minimum core you would need to become independently successful. That was sort of the point at which you could be comfortable saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do full time for my job.
And it probably also varies on whether you have 3 books out or 30 books out. I have 17 books out now, and they just all keep selling. So it's easier than when there's 1 book out. When there's 1 book out, there's 1 book to sell. Do you have? I had like 5 questions and I've forgotten them all. Do you have an idea of, if a person has a series, is it? I guess this is hard if it's a free book promotion, but it's so much harder to promote a book later in the series, because people want to read them in order. Even if you tell them, like with my Megan Montaigne and with my new mysteries, and even with the Balky Point Adventures, the Universes Inside the Lighthouse, middle grade ones, they're all standalone. But of course, the characters are introduced at the beginning, and then they're standalone, but you still have, history and whatnot. And I tell them that, but they still want to read them in order. So do you have any thoughts on that? How to promote books after book 1?
You're right. That is challenging. I think you just need, on your Amazon page or Nook or whatever page, you really need to make it super clear that these are standalone stories, that the series can be read in any order. That's about all you can do. Because, like you said, there's still a large percentage of people that are going to want to go in order. Yeah. So I'm not saying you can't promote the later books in this series. I think you should, but I think more of your marketing should be towards that first book, and periodically reinvesting in refreshing the cover, things like that. Because that's always going to be the gateway for a large percentage of your reader base.
Yeah, my new series, I'm trying to keep the number, this is book number 1, very small, because I just don't want, but then on Amazon, they require you to put a number. You can't just have an Agatha Christie mystery, which Agatha Christie can do, but I can't do. You have to have Agatha Christie number 1, Agatha Christie number 2, Agatha Christie number 3. And again, Agatha Christie does not have to do this, and she's really lucky, because aside from the fact that she doesn't have to make an income anymore, but but her books were all standalones, and she could just sell them you read this one, then you read that one. It doesn't matter. So there's so many. We need to start our own website, Jeffrey. You and me, we only have to have 100,000 each to make 200,000. So let's just do it. So, do you have an idea? I'm sure you have an idea. What if a person's doing a promotion through you, what are components that will lead to success, and what are components that will not lead to success?
I would say the blurb and the cover in that order.
In that order.
Well, maybe the cover first.
I would.
But a really bad cover won't even get the person to the blurb. So yeah, you're right. But man, that blurb has to be really good. It needs to. It shouldn't be too complicated. The biggest problem I see with a lot of people, especially in the fantasy and sci-fi genres, is they overcomplicate their blurbs and they try to explain everything in that blurb. It's like, no. That's what your whole chapter 1 is for.
Yeah.
You just need to give them a taste of what this world is. What are the challenges facing the main character? A hint of what direction it's going to go. Just enough to get them interested. You don't need to explain everything to them. There should be a call to action component in it that tries to push that person to take action, whether it's to download the book or to buy the book.
So the words download now or whatever, buy now.
Yeah, I think not everyone does that, but I'm a believer in call to action. Even
when it's a part of a newsletter, the whole purpose is to tell you to do that. It's still a good idea to say download now. Like I should be, because I don't think I've done that.
I don't know if you need to have it in the say the Fussy Librarian, but I'm a believer in that it should be somewhere on your Amazon page, because that's where you're quote unquote closing the sale.
Okay, that's it. Blurbs are the hardest part, and I imagine that having spent, I don't know how many blurbs you've read, you probably have a good insight into what works. That's probably good training right there, because you've read so many blurbs.
Yeah, shorter is better. The longer it gets, the greater the odds are that you're going to cause the reader to stumble somewhere, and you're increasing the chances for them to depart, to leave, to take that off ramp. So I'd like 2 to 3 sentences, 2 to 4 sentences for a newsletter blurb. I can go a little bit longer on your Amazon page, but not a lot more, because you've got to be cognizant of where that page break is. Because if you expect people to go, you're going to lose a certain percentage of people when you ask them to go below the page break on Amazon too. So you need to be thinking about that. Back to covers. Yeah, back to covers. And this was something I went through with my brother when he was working on his. Was a lot of authors don't realize or don't think of their cover in terms of the size that 99% of people are going to see it, and that's going to be a thumbnail. And so the title needs to be easily readable in that thumbnail size. The main dominant image needs to be pretty clear. You don't want people squinting, trying to figure out what the heck is that, when it's, because it's going to be the size of a slightly larger than a postage stamp. So, and that, there's a temptation that you want to put your name really huge, that until you're like a famous superstar, the title of your book is what should get top billing. Yeah. And once you're Agatha Christie, then you can flip it, because people are looking for you, Agatha Christie, the author.
Right.
For but for the, at the beginning, everyone else at the beginning of this journey, you're selling them on that catchy title, and so that's what's got to be largest.
Catchy title and good, clean image. It's so hard because in these author groups, sometimes you get these first-time authors. I mean, all the time you get these first-time authors, and they're so excited. And, you remember being there, and you remember all the things you didn't know. And I remember I did my own first covers, and they'll put this cover up, and they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, you did that yourself. And you want to be kind because you wanted people to be kind to you, but it's bad. And, I'm like, oh. So I always try and be as kind as I can while at the same time saying, you can't put that up. You just can't. I mean, you can, but you won't sell any.
Save up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then save up a little bit and spend as much as you can afford on a professional designer.
And I just want to be clear, I have made every mistake. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone. I have done it all wrong, which is how I know that it was the wrong thing to do.
Oh yeah. Oh, and for my first cover, which I still have because I haven't gone around to changing it out, but I used a photograph, and nothing dates your covers more than a photograph. But for the second one, I got someone who did watercolors to do. I gave her a photograph and said, "Go and do a watercolor of this for me," and it's a much more timeless cover that is going to last me a lot longer.
Yeah.
I think the best covers tend to be illustrations.
More expensive.
Maybe nonfiction is different, but for fiction, a drawing, an illustration, something like that is going to be more timeless and is going to feel fresh longer than most photographs.
And it'll also be more unique.
If I can talk about.
Go ahead.
Oh, just back to titles for a second. Yeah. Is for nonfiction authors, one thing I see a lot is nonfiction authors who try to treat their subtitles as SEO, search engine optimization exercises. And so there will be these ridiculous subtitles that are 12, 15, 18 words long. And I know that someone taught you that in a class somewhere about how it's going to help you with search engines, but I think there's a trade-off where the bulk of people are not going to take you seriously.
I agree.
And I know that the publishing industry in general has trended towards these longer subtitles, but man, you can't say it in 8 to 10 words. You need to go back and look at it again because it just starts to look silly after that.
Well, and it's creeping into fiction as well. You see murder mystery book and then a fast-paced romp that will take you through both. And I'm like, you're not doing that right. It just makes it look, like you said, it makes it look non-professional.
Yeah. And I let off that. I should say no more. And it's a balance between wanting to keep the customer happy and what you think will work best for them. And that's the constant battle.
So where do you see Fussy Librarian going in the next couple of years? Because, the growth I can imagine is just exponential. Are you tired?
Yeah, I am tired. Yeah, last year or two have been pretty grueling. But I think we hope to add some more people in the next year or two, and that'll lighten the load a little bit. I'd love to get to 500,000 on the free newsletter, and then I think the next goal after that is going to be 1 million. And the question is, does it take us another year or 2 years or 3 years?
Yeah.
But then after that, want to figure out some new products to help support the bargain newsletter, and try to figure out ways to improve that side as well. But yeah, we do for the most part, we just reinvest most of our revenue in and growing. Now, we did take a bank loan out in the spring because the economy collapsed and digital marketing prices had plummeted to lows that I hadn't seen in years. And it was a little scary, but I was like, well, it's now or never. And so we took the risk, and I think it's paid off for us. And so, but we're just going to keep reinvesting in 2021 and keep growing.
And how can authors help you?
They can go to theFussyLibrarian.com, and you'll find there's an advertising link at the top of the home page, and you'll see links to both our free newsletter and our bargain newsletter on those pages.
Okay. I've just put up your links here. We've got FussyLibrarian.com. Facebook, you are the Fussy Librarian, and Twitter, it is @FussyLibrarian.
Is FussyLibrarian.com? I'm not sure if we have the...
Do you know, I copied and pasted it directly from the website. So, oops, that's the wrong, I just put the wrong thing up. So it's just, there we go. It says the Fussy Librarian, but people who are watching and listening, double check, because I could be wrong. I do think I copied and pasted it directly from the URL.
I bet you did.
Because
you did. I just don't remember my own Twitter handle.
Well, Twitter is just plain Fussy Librarian. You're correct. The website is the Fussy Librarian, and yeah.
Yes, the website is the Fussy Librarian.
I'm going to put them all back up one more time. There they are. Facebook is the Fussy Librarian. Website, the Fussy Librarian. Twitter, just Fussy Librarian. All right.
So before we go, I got to know, where are your travel goals for 2021?
Oh my goodness! Do you know? Because Jeffrey, when I asked Jeffrey about doing this, I'm talking not to you, I'm talking to them now. He said, well, if we don't have anything to talk about, we can talk about travel, because we both love travel. Oh, which reminds me, I was going to say something, and then we'll get back to that. One thing I don't think a lot of people know about publishing and, Amazon, for example, and a lot of first-time authors have no clue as well, and then they find out, is how few copies you sell to get to the top of a subcategory within Amazon. People think, oh my gosh, you made the top of, you're #1 in this category. Well, if I sell 3 of my Pam on the Map Iceland books, I am at the top of the Iceland travel. Like, I'm a #1 seller in the Iceland travel. So I think that, when you're talking about having your 1,000 true fans, I think that gets you a lot higher on the list than people realize.
It does. And even for a big list like, say, the New York Times bestseller list, I think it's only a couple thousand copies a lot of times can get you on that list.
Or some money. I mean,
5 or 10,000 copies will do it. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's not anywhere near what people think it is. And so when you see someone who's a bestseller, just FYI, that's why I actually on Twitter, I may still have, like, best-selling author, because I was on, and I did it like laughing at no one knows. I was just, because I thought it was hilarious. Like, I am technically a best-selling author. So anyway, where do I want to go? I can't decide, and I keep, like, every time I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going to go, and then I'm like, no, this is where. The contenders are Western Australia plus middle of Australia, because I've done Eastern Australia, which is Sydney and Cairns and around there. Lightning Ridge is in my second Boggy Point adventure book, and that's in New South Wales, Australia. And I kind of want to go back, because I did it when I wrote it. I was like Google mapping it and like going along the streets in Google Map. And now that I've written about it, I might kind of want to go back. So that's more east, but Western Australia and Central Australia and Southern Australia. So that's one big one. Switzerland. I'm 7/8 Swiss, and so my family went to Switzerland in 2007, and we just, my sister and I were both like, it feels like home. Like, first, it does feel like your genes belong here, and so I want to go back. Italy, I want to do Sardinia. Do you know Sardinia? It's
that down in the boot.
No, it's an island. It's it's an island. It's one of. Do you know what the blue zones are? Have you heard of the blue zones? They're like where people have, like, there's 5 of them. The longest lived people in the world. Sardinia is one of them, but also it has all these. It's a huge bouldering rock climbing place, and so
Oh,
on Instagram, like all my travel Sardinia things and all my bouldering things, like sometimes they overlap because there's these gorgeous rocks in Sardinia, and I'm like, oh, look at that! I want to try. I want to climb that. So those, I started, and then there's Alaska. I haven't been to Alaska. Oh, how about you?
I think probably number one is the Netherlands. We had a trip all planned for my wife's 50th birthday, and we were going to go to like the big national flower parade and all that, and it was going to be held on her birthday.
Oh.
And then, yeah, pandemic happened, and that didn't happen. So I think that's definitely the first place we want to go. I think Ireland is on the list.
Where in Ireland?
And Italy. I would like to go to Italy. And for a solo trip, I'd like to go to Japan, specifically Osaka.
Okay, and what's the draw there?
I've never been to the Far East, and I just think that'd be a great place to explore. And I think I was, what was the Netflix series? Salt, Fat, Heat, Acid. Yeah, Salt, Fat, Heat, Acid. Yeah. That got me hooked on checking that out, as well as Tony Bourdain, who is my travel inspiration. Rest in peace. So yeah. I've probably got more places than I've got time or money to go to, but this past year has definitely given us all time to daydream about what we want to do next. So my wife is an ICU nurse, so we're crossing our fingers. She just might be 2 or 3 weeks away from getting the vaccine. So
oh wow, good.
Yeah, so that'll be great.
Yes. Tell her.
I did.
Please.
Yeah.
My thanks.
Thank you. The New York Times had one of those tools where you could figure out like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, and so I did that. And my wife is like out of 100 people, and my wife is like third in line, and I'm like number 97. So
that's where I am. Yeah. No, I did the thing where it was like. It tells you literally how many people, and I'm like 268.7 million people ahead of me in line. Like, great. So,
it's like you don't.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, for all those people who aren't eager to get it, that's your choice. I'll take your place in line. So yeah.
It's really heartening to see how few side effects and how everyone's doing pretty well on them. So, I'm ready. I am ready. Get it to me now.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad your wife's going to get it. And again, the nurses and doctors and all the frontline people. I actually dedicated my last book to them because I wrote it in pandemic. And I just, please thank you to your wife. And it's hard on you as well, I'm sure. So thank you. And also Ireland, I have a book out, Pam on the Map of Ireland. It's not one of my best, but I'll get you a copy if you want it. So. Well, Jeffrey, I could talk to you forever, but I don't want to take up all your time. This has been so fun, and thank you for doing a service to authors and readers. As an author, that means so much. Really excited to see your growth, to see, I think it was 2017 I did my first promotion with you, and I can definitely see how the impact is growing for me as an author, and so thank you for that.
Great. Thank you. It's been great to be with you today.
Yes. So I realized I'm new to these, and so I didn't tell Jeffrey how this would work. I'm going to end our conversation, and then you hang on, and I'll just say goodbye to you on Skype after this. So let me put your how to find Jeffrey up again on the Fussy Librarian online. And thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic day.